Hello, fantasy sports fans, and welcome to MFSN, the Hub's weekly Q&A. I am your host today, Casey Scheinvold. We are 1 week, 10 days away from the baseball trade deadline, which affects everybody's fantasy baseball rosters. And so there can be a lot of questions today about trades. I look forward to spending the next 45 minutes to you talking baseball or football or whatever sport you want to talk about. As always, please like these videos, subscribe to our channel, ring the bell for notifications, ask away in the chat. There's a bunch of questions there, but I'd love to get new questions as well to answer. We are going to, looks like, focus a little bit today on baseball. However, any questions you may have are fair game. The first question, Victor Robles. Victor Robles, for those of you who don't know, is an outfielder, primarily center field for the Washington Nationals. He was a top prospect several years ago when he was first called up, thought of as a speed and power guy. I got to watch him play in the minor leagues. He played for the Harrisburg Senators, and I live in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So shout out to the Senators there. Is it officially time to drop him in a 14-team dynasty league? The only thing he has going for him is his age. That's a tough question. Dynasty leagues are different than any other kind of league you'd be in. A redraft league, absolutely, he's droppable. I think he's unrosterable and has been for a while in a redraft league in which you recycle players every year. A dynasty league is you keep your whole team from year to year. 14-team dynasty leagues means, let's say roughly, let's say you have 20 players on your roster. So that's 14 times 20 is 280 players. Is he in the top 280 players right now? I still think, given his age and his combo, he probably is rosterable in a dynasty league. However, in any other league, I don't think it's a smart investment at this point. He is doing terribly. Let's see what his numbers are this year. They are players. Let me look them up. Victor Robles. His numbers this year, he's only batting .206. He only has 1 home run and 8 stolen bases. That's pretty atrocious. He's not even ranked in the top 960 players this year in fantasy baseball. And so it's tough to justify keeping him on your roster in anything but a dynasty league. It depends on whether you can pick up minor leaguers in your dynasty league, because Robles might be worth dropping if there's somebody in AAA or AA, like a Julio Rodriguez, that you can have on your roster and keep there in his spot, because that certainly is a higher upside. CJ Anderson, Bobby Witt Jr., those sorts of things. Who is the best pickup, Mike Yastrzemski, Jock Peterson, or J.D. Davis? Well, J.D. Davis qualifies at third base, so that gives him a leg up to me over Mike Yastrzemski and Jock Peterson. Jock Peterson, to me, is not a pickup. He is primarily known for hitting righties, and he's hitting below 220 against righties this year alone. So he's not even doing what he's supposed to be a specialist at. So I would toss him out of those three. Between Mike Yastrzemski, who I think is a really good young player, he's under 30, for the San Francisco Giants. He's an outfielder. If you need an outfielder, obviously he's a good pickup. J.D. Davis is a third baseman who can mash. He was hurt most of the year. I think his first game back this week, he came and hit 2 dingers. So he certainly is hitting. And so I think that J.D. Davis would be my pick of that crew, especially because of third base. Mike Yastrzemski is in the Giants, or plays for the San Francisco Giants, not necessarily a hitter's park, but still can put up some numbers for you. But there's a lot of eligible outfielders who can help. J.D. Davis, I don't think you can find many third basemen on the wire that are better than him. All right, I have a question. What are the main trading prospects in the trade deadline? So I'm going to interpret this as who are the main people to look for to get traded at the trade deadline that will affect fantasy teams. I think the first one is in the Chicago Cubs, and that's Craig Kimbrell, their closer. He is lights out. He's dynamite this year, and he's going to go to a team and go to a winning team, because right now the Cubs are in 4th place, I think, in their division, like more than 10 games out and under 500. So they're clearly sellers. So he'll be in a better situation because he'll go to a winning program. Where it's going to have the biggest fantasy impact is on the team that gets him, because whoever they have closing games now will suddenly lose their save opportunities, and whoever is rostering that closer will suddenly be struggling. So, for example, Ryan Presley has been a top 10 closer in Houston, but if Craig Kimbrel is traded there, Kimbrel becomes the closer and Ryan Presley loses value. Same with Boston and Matt Barnes. Matt Barnes is going to lose his position there. So that's one big one. If the Nationals play poorly this week, you could see probably the biggest name be traded would be Max Scherzer, the starting pitcher for the Nationals, who's a perennial Cy Young level pitcher. He's getting up there in years. His contract is a little burdensome for the Nationals, so they might move him if they decide to sell. If he goes to a team like the San Francisco Giants, I think his value skyrockets, and that would be a win for fantasy managers. Of position players, there's Chris Bryant is the biggest name probably that would get traded. That he's a Chicago Cub. He plays third base, but he qualifies at first base and a couple of outfield positions as well. So he is really valuable to a lot of teams because he can play all over the place and he can play at a high level. The Mets might be a team that would be interested in him because he could play third base or outfield for them. There's no end to where he would fit in. He could be a big trade target. His value, depending on what team he goes to, it could be a big hit or win. Okay, another question. Christopher Atwater asks, is Colton Wong a serviceable second baseman until he gets Ketel Marte back? If he gets Ketel Marte back, that's a good question. I'm a Colton Wong fan. I liked him when he was in St. Louis. I thought he was a power speed guy that they never gave the chance to develop. I think they relied too much on Matt Carpenter for too long, and it hurt Colton Wong's development. His issue in Milwaukee has been staying healthy and hitting consistently. I do think he's a serviceable second baseman. I think that he can give you some power. He can give you some speed. He's in a good lineup. Other second baseman I would consider, I guess we're going to look at the waiver wire here. So give me a second. And I'm going to look at the waiver wire and see what other second basemen are available in a majority of leagues. Let's see. So I'll look at players available in more than 60%. I think that's the way we kind of go. So let's see. Who would I rather have than him? If Jonathan India is available, that's somebody I would look at over him. I like Josh Rojas is available in a lot of leagues. He's out of the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's a really good second baseman who doesn't get a lot of credit. Ty France is another one who can put up pretty good numbers for you at second base. Let's see. Kike Hernandez, if you can get him, he qualifies at second, short, and outfield. He's available in a lot of places, and he is hot as fire right now, just hit 2 home runs. So that's somebody else I would look at before I would look at Colton Wong. But I would get Colton Wong. Ironically, this question comes from Christopher Atwater, who I think recently tried to trade for Ozzie Albies on my team. And I refused, not because it wasn't a fair trade offer, but because Ozzie Albies is the only second baseman I have on my roster. And so it would have been very difficult for me to trade him. But I like Colton Wong. He can give you he can steal some bags for you and hit you some home runs. The average is going to be the question. But I hope Marte comes back. I'm a big Ketel Marte fan. I think he's dynamic. I would love it if he would get healthy and my Yankees would trade for him, because I think he is absolutely the perfect fit for the Yankees with his left-handed bat and his versatility in the infield and the outfield. But I hope for your sake, Chris, that you get Marte back, because he is certainly somebody you used a high draft pick on. My son asks, who will I trade on my team? Well, buddy, that's a good question. What are you offering me? I would trade a lot of players on my team. There's very few players, Jackson, that I think are absolutely untouchable. I think if somebody's willing to pay the price, I would trade almost anybody. I have favorites. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is my favorite player on my team. You would have to trade almost everything imaginable to get him from me. But if you offer me enough, he's probably attainable. I have Christian Yelich, who I would trade because he's been underperforming this year. Somebody might want to take a chance on him. I would probably trade Bryce Harper because he's solid. He really is. He ends up in the top 50 every year, even though you don't feel like he blows you away. But he's not knocking runs in this year. And if he's not getting RBIs, that's not very helpful. So I would trade him. I have Byron Buxton and Adalberto Mondesi, who are both injured. I love both of them, but they can't stay healthy. So I would trade them just because I need healthy players on my team. So there's a few there I would trade. Should Louis Robert, I'm not really sure how to pronounce his name. He's the young stud outfielder for the White Sox who's been injured all year, 10-team redraft. I would drop Robert because I just don't. He had a really bad injury. I'm not sure when they're I think it was his knee. I don't know when they're predicting him to come back. Let me just check here real quick. But if there's better options out there for you to pick up, I don't know when he's going to be back. Let's see. He's actually beginning a rehab assignment at high A. He had a bad hip, grade 3 right hip flexor strain, but the recovery's gone well. If he can get back at the end of sometime in August, preferably the beginning of August, then I think you keep him because when he comes back, he can do really, really impressive stuff on the baseball field, and he can help you in your league, both with power and steals, RBIs, runs scored. Might not hit for the highest average, but he's not going to hurt you in average either because nobody hits for a high average anymore. Jazz Chisholm or Gleyber Torres? I'm a Yankee fan. I'm frustrated with Gleyber Torres. I'm hoping he's figured it out the past few games. He seems to be staying on pitches better and making better swings on the ball. So if he's coming back, that's great. He doesn't run. Jazz Chisholm does. Now, Jazz just went on the injured list with a shoulder contusion. If anybody saw it, he took a nasty dive chasing back to get a pop fly. And I thought he separated his shoulder. They're saying it's not separated, but shoulders are tricky things, and to come back and to be a hitter with all of the torque and pressure you put on your body in a swing could be tough. So right now I would lean Gleyber Torres, but I'm leaning him only because I'm worried about Jazz's injury. If it wasn't for his injury, I'd be all over Jazz because he gives you speed. I don't think Torres can steal more than 3 or 4 bags in a season. So Ross says it's July and Bellinger is hitting 179. Yeah, he's been atrocious. I'm worried about him. Obviously, he had the leg fracture early in the year, but it's not like in 2020, in the shortened season there, he was much better. There's something mechanical going on that he hasn't figured out, and I hope he does because he's a lot of fun to watch. He's an elite center fielder and an elite first baseman if he wants to play first. And I'd love to see him get back to his MVP level of 2019. But right now, you just can't trust him in fantasy. He's got to ride the bench. He's an excellent buy low candidate because he's got so much potential and so much ability that if you make the trade and he figures it out, he could carry you to the fantasy championship with 3 months of his production. So that would be a good one to consider as a buy low if you're looking for a lottery ticket. If Richard Rodriguez goes to Toronto, is it a good move for him? Well, it's a good move for Toronto. I think it's a good move for him because Toronto's a winning team. Richard Rodriguez, for those of you who don't know, is the closer for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He's an excellent pitcher, although he had a bad night. Was it last night where he gave up the home run to Michael Conforto, or 2 nights ago? But every closer has a bad night. I think it's good for him because he's going to a winning team. It's going to be a tough ballpark between Buffalo, where they play now, and then I think July 31st they move to Toronto, so he'll be playing his home games in Toronto. He's going to be going up against the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Rays, some really strong teams. But all in all, anytime, as long as he's guaranteed the closer role, which they don't have anybody in Toronto who can take it from him, anytime you move to a better team that's going to give you more save opportunities and you're a good closer, which Rodriguez is, I think it's good for his value. I would certainly be excited if I were a Rodriguez owner and I saw that move coming. So that's a good one. Trade Mookie for Acuna in a dynasty league. I would trade Mookie for Acuna today in a dynasty league if I could. I just think Acuna is that dynamic, and he is literally only getting better. I know he had the devastating knee injury. He's out for the rest of the year with a torn ACL and MCL, I believe. He's already had the surgery, if I read correctly last week. He'll be back sometime next season, hopefully before the start of the season, but definitely before the All-Star break. He is the closest thing other than Fernando Tatis Jr. to a 40-40 player that's in baseball right now, in my opinion. Mike Trout has the talent for it, but doesn't run as much anymore. And he's 22 or 23 years old. He's just in a dynasty league where you can have him for 15 years or 14 years. I would do it. Mookie Betts is great. I'm a huge Mookie Betts fan. He's in Los Angeles, very good right fielder, power speed guy, but I just think Acuna is a different level. So I would make that trade. Yes. Trevor Story sucks. No protection from Nolan Arenado, and outside of Coors, he's even worse. Trevor Story has had a rough year. He's batting below 250, I think, not putting up the power and production that we're accustomed to seeing out of him. He doesn't have a lot of lineup protection. Charlie Blackmon, CJ Cron, those guys, Brendan Rodgers, don't exactly strike fear into opposing pitchers. So Trevor Story's not seeing much to hit, and therefore he is not producing very well. I don't think he sucks. I think he's having a bad year. I think mentally the loss of Nolan Arenado on his team, as well as it's a contract year for him. He's been thinking he's going to get traded, I think, all year, because that's what every news outlet, sports outlet has been saying from day one. I think if he gets traded, you see a better Trevor Story the rest of the way. As a buy low candidate, to me, he's one of the top buy low candidates, because I don't think it's a Coors Field effect with him. I think he's a 30 home run, 300 batting average, 25 steals guy, no matter where he plays. So I would certainly still consider him fantasy gold if you can get him. Is Lindor droppable in redraft leagues after his injury? I have Javier Baez as the replacement. Francisco Lindor went down with an oblique injury, I think, earlier this week, right after the All-Star break, or just before. I'm forgetting which exactly. But oblique injuries are tough. They ask Adalberto Mondesi, or an Adalberto Mondesi owner like myself, who's been struggling with him being on the bench because of his initially obliques. Then it was a hamstring. I think now it's the other I don't know with him. He's always hurt. But they're tough for batters to come back from. I'm assuming you have an IL spot on your roster. If you're in a Yahoo league, I wouldn't drop Francisco Lindor. I would either put him in my IL spot or try to trade him, because he's still going to have value to somebody who has an IL spot. Like if I had an open injured list position on my roster and Francisco Lindor was being dangled as trade bait, I would pay something for it just to keep him on my roster. This guy is one of the best shortstops in baseball. He's having a bad year, but if he comes back, even if it's the middle to end of August and is the Francisco Lindor of old in September, that is amazing for your roster. So no, I mean, Javi Baez is good. Javi Baez, to me, from a fantasy perspective, is not Francisco Lindor. And so if you have him as your replacement, that's pretty fortunate, because those are pretty big names. But I would be more likely to trade Lindor or stash him in my injured list than I would to drop him. I just don't think you can drop somebody like that. Is it time to cut the cord and drop Charlie Blackmon? That's a very good question. I guess a lot depends on what else you have, obviously. Charlie Blackmon on the year is batting .270 with only 5 home runs and 1 stolen base. He does have 43 RBIs and 37 runs scored, but again, that is not very good. That is not somebody you want starting on your fantasy team. And if he's just toiling away on the bench, again, I would try to trade him before I dropped him, but there's so many better other producers out there. If it's a 12-team league, he's still not even in the top 250 players. So if you do the math from that perspective, he's not rosterable. Because if you think about it, a 12-team league, let's say 20 players on the team, even if it's 25 in a 12-team league, that's 300 players. Right now, he is ranked as the 323rd best fantasy player. So if you do it from a straight numbers perspective, he's not worthy of a roster spot right now. Now, if you're looking at it as somebody who could potentially get hot and change that quick, then you would consider it. But no, I don't think you have Charlie Blackmon right now on your team in a redraft league at all. Yelich and Bellinger still, I assume he means stink. Drop them, trade them, do whatever it takes to remove them, going 0 for 8 every day. Well, Yelich did hit a home run the other day, so I don't agree with them going 0 for 8 every day. I do believe Yelich and Bellinger are two of those guys who are struggling a great deal. How's that? I do believe, again, that Bellinger is terrible, but again, buy low candidate. Yelich too. Yelich, I'm a little more concerned about, and I own Christian Yelich. So I say that only because of his back injury or his history of back injuries. I don't know if he's just tapped out because of that. Bellinger was hurt earlier this year, but it was an orthopedic issue. Like he just fractured his leg. It's not a chronic shoulder, oblique, back, neck issue that would have a lasting impact. If I'm going to trade for one of those two, I would rather trade for Cody Bellinger right now than Christian Yelich, even though Yelich is doing better. I just think Bellinger has higher upside. Ian Kennedy, will he lose the closer role once he's traded? That's a good question. Yes, I believe he will. I don't think anybody's going to trade for him to be their primary closer. Ian Kennedy is right now with the with the Texas Rangers. I'm sorry. He's got 15 saves. He's got about a strikeout per inning, just a hair over that. Decent ERA and whip. He's pitching really well. But is he an upgrade over Ryan Presley in Houston? No, I don't think he is. I think if he went to Toronto, we talked about Toronto earlier with Richard Rodriguez. If he went to Toronto, I think he would close. I guess it depends on the team he's going to go to. Matt Barnes. I can't find him. Hold on. Matt Barnes right now, his numbers are similar. He has 19 saves, but he's pitching better. He has almost 2 strikeouts, a little over a strikeout and a half per inning. And he's got a 2.6 ERA and less than a 1 whip. So he's doing just as well, if not better than Kennedy. And so these teams that are going to be looking for closers, if we go down the division, in the AL East, who are the contenders? Tampa Bay is not looking for a closer. Toronto is. So Toronto, he would probably start there. The Yankees aren't looking for a closer. The Red Sox would take Craig Kimbrell, but that's probably the only one who would come in as a closer over Matt Barnes, who's pitching well. In the Central, the White Sox certainly don't need it. They have Liam Hendricks, and they're kind of running away with that division. The Indians are the only ones close at this point, and they have Clase as well as Karinchak, who are both very good pitchers, so they're not going to do it. Out west, he's not better than Ryan Presley, so he's not going to take that job from him in Houston. Lou Trevino is doing a really good job in Oakland, so you're not going to take it there. They just paid a lot for Raisel Iglesias in the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. If they make a run, they're still not going to be looking for a closer. In the National League, the Mets have Edwin Diaz. You're not doing that. Maybe if he went to the Phillies, but Ranger Suarez right now is doing really well for them. The Nationals have Brad Hand. I don't think he's an upgrade over Brad Hand. In the Central, you're not replacing Josh Hader in Milwaukee, and everybody else is at least 8 games back, so it's not even any other contest. Out west, maybe San Francisco, although they seem to be doing pretty well with Rogers and Jake McGee, although Kennedy might be an upgrade there. You're not going to replace Kenley Jansen in LA, and San Diego has Mark Melancon, who's been excellent. So Kennedy might get dealt and likely will, but I think it's going to be more for bullpen depth. If he gets traded, he's like one of those guys who will get you one save or two saves every couple weeks only because the closers work 2 or 3 nights in a row. I don't think, unless it's to Toronto or maybe San Francisco, he's going anywhere where he's going to be the everyday closer. I just don't see it. Too soon to give up on Wander Franco in 10-team redraft categories. He's been pretty terrible. He had an amazing debut. Everybody thought, look, this guy's going to hit the ground running. But some of the greatest fantasy baseball players, MLB baseball players, have struggled. Mike Trout was terrible his first year up. Aaron Judge was terrible his first year up. In redraft leagues, I don't think it's too soon to cut the cord on Wander Franco if you have a good substitute. I know we talked when he first came up, somebody asked about him or Tim Anderson. Obviously, if you have somebody of Tim Anderson's ilk, you're not going to replace him. He's just too good of a player. Willy Adames is playing so much better. Ironically, the one they traded away earlier in the season from Tampa Bay to make room for Wander Franco in the infield. He's just been running circles around him. I mean, if you don't have a shortstop, then you can't cut him. But there's a lot of shortstops that are performing better, at least 10 or 11. And so in a 10-team redraft, I don't know if you drop him, but I don't think you start him. You make him prove it for a while. Willy Adames or Tim Anderson, who starts? Oh, well, at this point, Willy Adames, since he's been traded to the Brewers, has been a top 40 or 35 fantasy producer at shortstop. He's just been overall one of the best fantasy hitters in baseball since he went to Milwaukee. And I think you keep riding that. Tim Anderson is great. It's a great problem to have, to choose between the two of them. I would probably put one in my utility spot and the other one at shortstop. Tim Anderson gives you more potential for speed. At this point, Willy Adames has been a better contact hitter. He's been making more consistent contact. He's been showing power in RBIs. I am very fortunate on my fantasy team that I picked up Willy Adames right before he was traded, and he's been my replacement for Adalberto Mondesi, so it hasn't hurt me. I just can't. I can't recommend not playing both of those guys. If I had to pick one, you were asking me today, I'm probably going to take Adames until he cools off. That would just be the way I would do it. Are we picking up Josiah Gray? Josiah Gray is the new is the top pitching prospect for the Dodgers. He's supposed to be starting this evening. For those of you who haven't been paying attention, the Dodgers' once vaunted rotation has taken some hits. Kershaw's on the IL. Trevor Bauer is embroiled in a bunch of terribleness, and we don't know when we're going to see him again. Once he sorts out his off-the-field issues, he can come back. And so you have, ironically, they still have Walker Buehler, who's fantastic, Julio Urias, who's fantastic, Tony Gonsolin, who's been pitching great, and David Price just pitched for him, and he's been pitching great too. He did well for them. But after those four, they don't really have anybody. Dustin May went down with I think he had Tommy John surgery earlier this year, so he's out for the season. So they're scrambling for that fifth starter position. Look for them to make a splash, I think, in the trade market if they can. It'd be interesting to see what they're willing to do if Max Scherzer becomes available, because that would be a fun rotation with him. Are we picking him up? I am. I mean, look, he pitches in a great pitcher's ballpark. Most of the NL West are great pitcher's ballparks, and he's got a great offense behind him. So even if he doesn't pitch great from an ERA perspective, he can still get you wins in those category leagues. He does have the repertoire, the pitches, the arsenal for strikeouts. If he can get you strikeouts, keep the whip under 1.3, hopefully under 1.2, and keep the ERA under 4, like he can help you in fantasy leagues for the rest of the season. I would pick him up. I wouldn't start him right away. I tend to ascribe to the theory of a rookie, unless it's the superstar number one prospect, like when Jose Fernandez came up, you have to prove to me after 2 or 3 starts that you have the stuff to stick in the league. That's what I did with Logan Gilbert in Seattle. He's been paying dividends for me. So I am definitely recommending you pick him up. I wouldn't start him yet. I would pick him up and leave him on your bench. We have plenty of room. If you have somebody like a Johnny Cueto, you can drop Johnny Cueto and pick up Josiah Gray. You're not going to lose anything. If you have any one of the Cincinnati Reds pitchers at this point, it feels like you can drop them because they've all been terrible. But I would pick him up and at least roster him, because if he does well, you can play him. If he does well, but not well enough to fit into your rotation, you can trade him. Just because the major league trade deadline is July 31st, most fantasy league deadlines are sometime in August. So you'll get a couple starts out of him. Dr. Dan. Hi, Dr. Dan. Welcome back. Do you think Shane Bieber is coming back this year? I heard he just started throwing again. I read that today. I certainly hope he does. I have him in one of my fantasy leagues. Dan, I know you have him. Let me read. Very funny. But I hope he comes back. He's obviously a ways back. He just started playing catch. But if he can come back the end of August and give you 4 starts in September, 5 starts in September, that would be great for a team trying to make a push to win the league at the end of the year. Shoulders are tough. Like, in one of my leagues, I have Flaherty, I have Tyler Glasnow, I have Shane Bieber, and I have Corey Kluber. So I thought what was a great pitching rotation fantasy-wise 3 months ago would be I'd be riding that to the championship, and now I have it all on the IL, and I'm relying on a bunch of fillers. So I do hope that Bieber comes back, because you want the best pitchers playing on in the biggest games, and Bieber is, even though he's hurt, one of the 5 best pitchers probably in baseball. And Cleveland, if they're going to have any chance of making a wild card push, I don't think they're going to catch the White Sox, but if they're going to have any chance of a wild card push, they're going to need Bieber back. And if they can make that push and get Bieber back so that he gets 2 or 3 starts under his belt so that he can be the starter in the wild card game, I mean, that's a dream scenario for him. It's kind of like his Willis Reed moment, or Kirk Gibson, since we're talking baseball. Cavan Biggio or Jonathan India. Interesting. They're 2 very similar players. Biggio is supposed to give you a little more speed, but he's really struggled this year. I think Cavan Biggio has proven he's going to be a modest average hitter. Maybe 260 is going to be where we look to see him batting. He's going to provide some pop. He gives you some position versatility. Jonathan India is more exciting right now because we haven't seen what 2 to 3 years of him can look like. I would probably lean Jonathan India, but I think they're very similar players. And if you have one or the other, I wouldn't necessarily feel all that great about it long term. But right now, I think I'd take Jonathan India. Which is more valuable, Ian Happ or a broken clock? Well, Dan, if anybody's been watching, and I hope you all have, our waiver wire show from the beginning of time, speaking of a broken clock, Dan is consistent and has always been consistent saying that Ian Happ is one of the most overrated players in fantasy, that he will never be what people think he's going to be. He had a decent 2020 shortened season, and so everybody jumped on the bandwagon and said, this guy can help you win. And Dan sat there and said, nope, he'll be on the waiver wire by the 2nd month of the season, and he's been right. So, Dan, you are more right than Ian Happ. And about Ian Happ, a broken clock is right twice a day. That's the old adage. Ian Happ is right maybe once a week. So I'm going to give broken clock the win on that one. Who has a better chance to return, Glasnow or Severino? I think Severino has a better chance. I don't think Glasnow is coming back this year. I would love for him to, but he's got a partially torn UCL in his pitching elbow. He could have had Tommy John. He's choosing to do rest and rehab. I think if Tampa Bay is smart, they would just if he's going to rest, they'd have him rest the whole year. Because I think they're going to make the playoffs without him. I don't know. I think Severino's coming back. Severino was on his way back from the Tommy John, and then he had a hamstring or some other lower body injury. He's going to be thrown again. I think he'll be back by the middle to end of August, if I had my bet, and will be an important piece of the Yankees going forward. What do you expect out of Chris Sale for this year? And for keeper leagues, what about next year? I think Chris Sale is going to be the most impactful starter in the last 2 months of the season. And I say that because I think he's going to get probably 7 wins in 2 months. I'm as a Yankees fan, I'm scared of that guy. I know we've hit him well over the years, but I think that was just because he was injured. That guy is all elbows and knees and this weird, funky delivery from a 3/4 to less than 3/4 left-handed pitch. I think he could be the reason the Red Sox are World Series contenders, as much as that makes me throw up in my mouth a little bit. I think for keeper purposes, it's a little dicier just because of his age, and pitchers are finicky, but you can do a lot worse. So I'm pessimistic as a Yankees fan, because that means I'm optimistic that Chris Sale is going to come back and be really, really good. So that makes me sad. But which closers could get dealt in real life but still close on their new team? Obviously, Craig Kimbrell, wherever he goes, he's going to close. He is elite. He's probably the most likely closer to get dealt, him and Richard Rodriguez. I think Richard Rodriguez, wherever he gets traded, would likely become the closer. I talked earlier, there was a question about him going to Toronto. I think if he goes to Toronto, he's the closer there. If he went to Houston, I think Ryan Presley and Richard Rodriguez are similar. I don't know if you would take Presley out of that role unless it's for Craig Kimbrell. So those two I could see getting moved. Let's see, who else? There's not a lot of closers that I can think of that are going to get moved. If you look in Seattle, Kendall Graveman could get moved, but he's not. I don't think he's going to be a closer wherever he goes. The Miami Marlins have, I'm blanking on his name. Their closer could get moved, but again, not to a team where he's immediately going to jump into the closer's role, unless it's like Toronto, who's desperate because they've had like 3 or 4 different players who have not locked down the closer's role for them. Who will be better for the rest of the year, J.D. Martinez or Brian Reynolds? You know, did you ever think you would ask that question in fantasy baseball when J.D. Martinez was playing well? Brian Reynolds is the outfielder for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He's been an absolute stud this year. J.D. Martinez is arguably the best right-handed hitter in baseball. Does he qualify in the outfield? I believe he does. Let me check. If I had to pick one, off my gut reaction is telling me to take J.D. Martinez just because he's been in it before. And we know what he can do both in the regular season and the postseason and big games. He's batting .305. He's got almost 20 home runs. Let's see what Brian Reynolds has done. But it's just funny because Brian Reynolds, like if you asked, I don't think anybody would have said, named him in the same sentence as J.D. Martinez a couple years ago. And now it's a legitimate question. He is not putting up as good of numbers, but pretty comparable. He's doing only 17 home runs, 54 runs, and 54 RBIs and a .302 average. They're actually almost entirely similar. But I would take J.D. Martinez just on a trust factor, not because or Debbie Reynolds. Well, I am a big fan of Singing in the Rain. I think it was a great underrated movie, musical with Donald O'Connor and Debbie Reynolds, and it was very, very good. But I don't know how good she is at baseball, but she can sing probably a lot better than both of them, or could. Is Francisco Lindor a cut candidate outside of keeper leagues? We talked about this. That's interesting. I couldn't cut him. He's on the IL now. I would put him as an IL stash. I would trade for him if the owner had him and was considering dropping him, if I had an IL stash available, because he could do it. He could come back. And is he worth keeping in leagues that keep 6 players or less? That's a very self-serving question, Dan. Yes, he's still a keeper to me. I don't think one bad season of somebody who's been that productive for 5 straight seasons or 6 straight seasons is Burt Reynolds. Well, Burt Reynolds, then you got Cannonball Run, and I'm a huge Cannonball Run fan. So Harold Reynolds, my goodness. How about Reynolds Wrap? Should we talk about aluminum foil too? What's the best trade you ever made? I think the one I made this year. I traded Aaron Nola, I traded Blake Snell, and I traded JTL Realmuto in a keeper league for Walker Buehler. It was a risk at the time because obviously Nola and Snell were very good pitchers. Snell was coming off his World Series start where everybody thought he was going to go to San Diego and dominate, and there was certainly that chance. Snell has been terrible. Realmuto has not been a keepable player, and this is a keeper league. And Aaron Nola in his last, 8 starts has over a 6 ERA, or 6 starts has over a 6 or 7 ERA, and the team isn't doing that well. He's pitching tonight against the Yankees, so I'm rooting for his woes to continue, with all due respect to whomever owns him. So I think that was one of the best trades I've ever made. I made a really good trade for Christian Yelich, although I gave up a prospect who had never played but was coming up to play in Fernando Tatis Jr. And so that didn't work out as well for me in that trade. Okay. Isn't Tim Reynolds somebody? Yes. Who's Tim Reynolds? Oh, he's, I don't remember. I'll think of it probably as soon as the show is over, but that's okay. So we have just a couple minutes left. If you have any more questions, I'd love to answer one more before we hit the end of this. I hope you guys enjoyed listening. I certainly had fun talking about all the different kinds of Reynolds in the world, as well as all of the baseball questions that were asked. The trade deadline is next week. I'm looking forward to seeing all the movement. I love watching the trade deadline approach because I want to see which teams are buyers and sellers and who's going to be moving. I just traded for Eduardo Escobar, and I'm hoping there's all this talks of him getting traded. I hope he goes to the White Sox, but Lurie Garcia has been great there. I don't want him to go to a team where he won't get the same sort of playing time or opportunity, but we'll see what happens. Is Tim Reynolds a country singer? I don't know. Now you're gonna make me look it up. Tim Reynolds. I'm gonna find out who it is and be very upset. Oh, that's who he is. He's the lead guitarist, or the one who always goes on tour with Dave Matthews and does his acoustic stuff. I have the Dave Matthews and Tim Reynolds album. He's fantastic. He plays the acoustic guitar and almost makes it sing. It's really fun to listen to. So guys, again, thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe to our channel. Please ring the bell for notifications so you can find out when any new stuff is coming out. Leave comments in any of our videos, and we'll do our best to respond to each and every one of them personally. We love talking fantasy sports. We love being told what we do well. We also love to learn from things you'd like to see us do better. So please don't be shy. Please tell us any information you think we could that would help us improve our product. Have a great night. Enjoy the rest of the week in baseball. We'll see you tomorrow evening on our Waiver Wire show, which comes out at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific. And after that, we will touch base with you again next week. Fantasy football starting up soon, so please stay tuned. We're going to have a lot of fantasy football content coming out in the next month. Take care and have a great night.
We're gonna set the internet on